In my introduction, I talked about groups and understanding them. We know that understanding individual behavior is important, but again, we know that most work is going to take place in a group setting. So what's important for you as a manager is knowing how to understand people in work groups and how to create effective teams. So when we look at groups, we know that it's two or more individuals interacting and interdependent who come together to achieve a particular objective. And we also know that we can break those groups down into two different groups. We know that there is a formal group, and a formal group is defined by the organization structure and designed for work establishments to get tasks done. And in these groups, acceptable behaviors are stipulated by directing toward organizational goals. We also know, and within that you can have command, and I'll talk about those in a few minutes. But we also have formal or informal groups. They're neither formally structured nor organizationally determined. So the four types of groups that are out there, there's a command group, and that's determined by an organizational chart. And it's where you fall within your organization. It could also be a task group, and a task group is just coming together. You work to complete a job task. It can also be organizationally determined, and that's usually groups that are comprised of people, again, working and wanting to complete the job. They're not limited to that hierarchical order that we talked about with command. But it can span multiple functional and command relationship lines. And then with our informal groups, we have interest groups, and they're people that may affiliate to attain a specific objective or a shared interest. It's really the formation of a united body to go out there and further its own common interests. And then we also have friendship groups, and that's where members have one or more common characteristics. These social alliances sometimes frequently extend beyond work situations. It could be a company softball team, or I'm part of a bunco group that's been together for 30-something years. It could be similarly demographic. It could also be a sports or a hobby interest, just something that draws or brings those people together. Now, why do people join groups? Oh my goodness, there's so many different reasons that they do that, and there's really no single reason why that people join groups, but people belong to a number of different groups, and it appears obvious that each group provides different benefits to its members. And we can look at this, and this just gives us several different reasons. People might join a group because of security. Maybe they feel insecure if they have to stand on their own. We know that people feel stronger, they have fewer self-doubts, they're more resistant to threats when they feel like they're part of a group. And then there's just simply status, because they know that if they're included in that group, they're viewed as being important by others, so it really gives them recognition and status. And then self-esteem. Groups can provide people with a feeling of self-worth. That is, in addition to conveying status to those outside the group, membership also can give that increased feeling of worth to the group members themselves. And then simply affiliation. Groups just really fulfill social needs. People enjoy regular interaction that comes with group membership. And for many of these people, those on-the-job interactions are really their primary source for fulfilling their needs of affiliation. And then simply, it could be power. What can't be achieved individually often becomes possible through group action. And there is power a lot of times in numbers. And then it might be a goal achievement. Sometimes it just takes more than one person to accomplish a particular task. So what happens is people pull their talents, their knowledge, or power, and then in some instances management will rely on the use of a formal group to do that. So let's look at group properties. We have roles, we have norms, we have status, we have size, and we also have cohesiveness. This week, I think we're going to cover all the way down through everything, and then we'll touch on cohesiveness next week. But let's talk about roles first. We know that roles is a set of expected behavior patterns that are attributed to occupying a given position within a social unit. And typically, people are required to play a number of diverse roles, both on and off the job, which makes the understanding of the role behavior a lot of times more difficult. Because when these multiple roles are incompatible, individuals a lot of times may experience conflict. We know we have role identity, and the attitudes and actual behaviors consistent with a given role. People can shift roles rapidly when they recognize the situation and its demands clearly require a major change. And then there's role perception, our view of how we're supposed to act. And the interaction of how the individual believes he or she is supposed to behave will determine a lot of time that behavior. There's also role expectations. It's how others believe you should act. And that, when we think about it, we will see people and we think, well, that's the way that person should behave. And it's really determined a lot of time, it's defined in the context in which the person is acting. There's that psychological contract. It's an unwritten agreement between employees and employers setting out mutual expectations. So we have those where we kind of have those psychological contracts with our employees, knowing that we're supposed to act a certain way. At Union University, we're supposed to act Christianly because we're a Christian university. Then we may have a conflict with that. When the individual finds that compliance with one's role requirements make it more difficult to comply with another. So looking at the role expectations and what we play, and I know all of us can think about groups and where we maybe played a role within that group. Maybe that when you're in that group, I know when I went through the master's program, I was an English undergraduate major, so I was expected to write all the papers because I understood grammar. But someone else in my group had a role, and they were the CFO of their company, so they always did the numbers. So think back to a time when you've been a part of a group and the role that you played in that group. And then we move to norms, and that's just the acceptable standards of behavior that are shaped by the group members. And when accepted by the group members, norms act as a means of influencing the behavior of the group members with a minimum of external control. All groups have norms. But the norms can significantly differ within that group. And what happens is we want people to stay within their norms. This is the way that you should normally behave. So when I was in the master's program, you write the papers. What if one week I decided I want to do the numbers? Then that would be something that stepped outside of my norms. And so we tell members of a group what they ought and ought not to do under certain circumstances. I'm going to break here and I'm going to post a video on the Hawthorne studies. And then after watching the Hawthorne studies, I'll pick back up with the lecture and then we'll continue.